You can live without the latest gadget. You can skip a vacation. But can you imagine an America where even a decent meal becomes a luxury? That future is no longer just a bad dream. It's starting to unfold quietly and more dangerously than you think. Because when American agriculture can no longer feed its own people, the fallout isn't just about running out of milk meat or vegetables. It's the unraveling of an entire consumer ecosystem, including brands you once believed could never go away. That box of mac and cheese you trust for breakfast, the soda your kid grabs every afternoon, the quick burger you count on after a long shift. All of it is starting to shake under the weight of a growing crisis. One born in dry fields, shuttered farms, and grocery shelves that look emptier every week. And today we're pulling back the curtain on 10 household brands that could disappear at any moment, unless America steps up and saves the very people growing the food on our tables. 1. Kraft Heinz. Kraft Heinz was never supposed to be a brand at risk, but in today's American farm crisis, nothing is off the table. Just look at California's dairy farms, one after another is shutting down. Feed prices have surged 18% in just the first quarter of 2025, while milk prices have dropped by nearly $2 per 100 pounds. It's a cruel paradox. Cows are still being milked every day, but farmers are bleeding money with every gallon. And Kraft, a company built on industrial cheese sourced from American heartland farms, is now stuck between two bad choices: cut the product line or cut the quality. And when it comes to tomatoes, the outlook is even worse. This year's crop in California's Central Valley, once the source of 90% of America's processed tomatoes, has collapsed due to drought and a massive labor shortage. No tomatoes means no ketchup. No ketchup means your 4th of July hot dog just lost its soul. Can they just import it? Well, not so fast. Imported canned tomatoes from Europe are now 34% more expensive than domestic, not to mention the rising costs of global shipping. So Kraft is forced into a corner: raise prices or lower standards, both of which risk losing loyal customers. Products like Kraft Singles, Heinz Ketchup, and even Campbell's Soups are no longer the automatic grab on the shelf. More and more working-class families are switching to cheaper off-brand options, not because they like the taste, but because they simply can't afford the old favorites anymore. For many, a single slice of cheese is no longer about flavor, it's about electricity, bills, gas money, and making it to next week. Kraft Heinz used to represent everything comforting and familiar about the American kitchen. But in a country where even the farmland is struggling to survive, who's still going to pay for a slice of cheese just to hang on to a memory? And if a brand built on convenience, nostalgia, and family meals can be shaken like this, just wait till you see what's happening to the brand that defined fast food for an entire nation. 2. McDonald's. McDonald's, the ultimate symbol of fast food, has never felt more fragile. Juicy burgers, crispy fries, that comforting scent of grease and salt. It's the taste millions of working Americans crave after a long shift. Affordable, reliable, familiar. But behind those golden arches lies a brewing storm that could shake the entire fast food industry. It all starts in the Midwest, the endless fields of corn and soybeans that produce the vegetable oils powering McDonald's fryers. As fertilizer costs skyrocket and crop prices crash, more farmers are walking away from their land. The result: a tightening oil supply, sending frying oil prices up more than 15% in 2025 alone. McDonald's can't ignore it. Their only options: raise prices or change the recipe, either move chips away at the experience customers have come to expect. And beef, the cornerstone of the Big Mac, it's in trouble too. Texas, Nebraska, Kansas, the backbone of U.S. cattle ranching, are all facing a crippling labor shortage. With skyrocketing feed costs, ranchers are downsizing herds, and national beef production is down nearly 7% from last year. McDonald's is scrambling to renegotiate with suppliers, but imports from Australia or Canada come at a 30% markup, and they can't close the gap. Then there's labor and operations. To keep menu prices steady, McDonald's has started tightening operational budgets, cutting kitchen and drive-thru hours. That means longer lines, longer waits. At peak times, customers are waiting 5 to 10 minutes just for a burger. And for many Americans, 1 extra minute is all it takes to sour the entire experience. These little changes might go unnoticed at first, but not to the middle-aged crowd that values consistency. To them, every delay, every missing flavor, every overcooked patty becomes a red flag. McDonald's just isn't what it used to be. Customer trust is eroding, not in a loud collapse, but like a slow leak. Bit by bit, the once automatic choice becomes a backup plan. People start turning to cheaper chains, regional diners, or home-cooked meals. The golden arches still stand, but what they represent is slowly fading. McDonald's has survived recessions, controversies, even health trends. But this time, the threat isn't marketing or menu fatigue, it's the deep rot in the very ingredients and systems that built the empire. And when strategies like menu innovation or downsizing staff to control prices can no longer plug the holes, the fall won't stop at the Big Mac. We're about to see something far bigger, the slow collapse of convenience food culture, and a growing hunger that no new combo meal can satisfy. And next up, we turn to a brand that once filled every American pantry, where empty shelves are now sending a message louder than any ad campaign. 3. Walmart. Walmart used to be a safe haven for working families, stable prices, fully stocked shelves, and everything from flour and rice to canned meat and breakfast cereal all under one roof. But now those familiar aisles are starting to look empty, like a stage with no audience. And here's the thing, it's not even Walmart's fault. The trouble began out in America's heartland, where corn, soybeans, and wheat once grew in abundance. These basic ingredients power thousands of affordable packaged foods. But with export contracts to Canada stalled and domestic demand collapsing, farms in Iowa and Illinois have started leaving fields fallow. Crops go unsold. Supply chains seize up. Walmart's central warehouses are seeing sharp inventory drops, forcing the company to scale back orders and prioritize only essential goods, all while grain prices have surged over 20%. Flour, oats, instant noodles, crackers, they've all taken a hit. And it doesn't stop at dry goods. Walmart's cold transport system, once considered its steel fist in logistics, is showing signs of strain. Refrigerated trucks sit idle, waiting on delayed inventory. Drivers are in short supply. Warehouse staff work overtime but still can't keep up. Many local stores are now reducing their incoming shipments, not because they want to, but because the entire cold chain is buckling under pressure. Add to that a painful truth. Prices are no longer what they used to be. Walmart prided itself on everyday low prices, but now a bag of flour is up by 30 cents and a crate of canned meat costs a few dollars more. That edge, that price advantage that once drew millions, is fading fast. For middle-aged consumers, especially working-class families, it's becoming a serious question. Do we shop here less, or just buy less overall? But here's the real danger, not the empty shelves themselves, but the broken trust they leave behind. When a child asks mom, why are the noodle shelves empty, that moment alone can shape how a family shops all summer. Because Walmart to many isn't just a store, it's where families place their trust in food security. To fight back, Walmart has ramped up imports from Latin America and Southeast Asia. But shipping costs have exploded and the company is now spending millions of extra dollars each week just to keep shelves stocked. Still, it's not enough to fill the gap left by falling domestic agricultural output. And if a retail giant like Walmart, with warehouses in every state and decades of supply chain mastery, can be shaken like this, then what happens next when fresh food chains dependent on livestock and poultry face the same shortages? The next storm is already on the horizon, and for millions of Americans, it's not just about what's missing on the shelves. It's about whether the system can still deliver at all. 4. Tyson Foods. For generations, Tyson Foods was more than just a company. It was a promise of steady work for working-class kids growing up near farms and feedlots. But now that promise is starting to crack, somewhere between dried-up pastures and silent slaughterhouses. In 2025, the cattle population in key states like Texas, Nebraska, and Kansas has fallen to its lowest levels in decades. Why? Because feed prices have doubled and ranchers simply can't afford to keep going. And Tyson, whose massive output of beef, chicken, and pork feeds millions across the country, is now running out of raw protein. They've been forced to cut shifts/production and in some cases shut down entire beef plants, leaving hundreds of workers without jobs almost overnight. But it's not just the cows that are missing, it's the people too. Recent immigration crackdowns have gutted the backbone of Tyson's labor force. Thousands of immigrant workers, the silent hands keeping the conveyor belts moving, are being detained, questioned, or outright fired. Tyson can't replace them fast enough. Plants are stalling. And the result? Less chicken, less pork, higher prices, empty shelves. And for everyday shoppers, a clear sense that something's gone wrong. Meanwhile, Tyson is facing a different kind of threat: consumer trust. A wave of organic and ethically sourced food brands, still small in scale, is rapidly growing. More Americans are concerned about health, sustainability, and animal welfare. And Tyson. They've fallen behind. Years of focusing on volume over innovation has left them vulnerable, and now they're scrambling to catch up in a market they no longer dominate. If the agricultural base collapses, the meat supply chain crumbles with it. Sure, Tyson can freeze excess inventory or ramp up imports, but that's just putting duct tape on a bursting pipe. The deeper problem remains no livestock, no labor, no production. And once the factories shut down and the workers walk away, the whole system begins to fall apart. If a giant like Tyson with decades of scale and resources can be brought to its knees by a shortage of cows and workers, then what happens to the next brand on this list? The one that relies entirely on pork. 5. Smithfield Foods. When America's pork supply chain starts to shake, one name gets called out first: Smithfield Foods. For nearly a century, Smithfield has been the symbol of American pork. But in 2025, that symbol is cracking. With over 40 processing facilities stretching from Iowa to North Carolina, Smithfield needs a massive steady stream of hogs to keep its operations running. This year, though, that stream is drying up. Hog production has plunged. Feed costs have soared, driven by sky-high corn prices. Water and electricity bills on farms are hitting record levels. Ranchers are losing money and cutting back their herds. And when the pigs disappear, Smithfield pays the price. Across their plants, workers now spend hours standing beside idle machines and empty conveyor belts. Some facilities in South Dakota and Missouri have already shut down temporarily, citing a critical shortage of supply. Long-term contracts with distributors are fraying, and grocery chains across the South are reporting major shortages from sausage links to smoked hams to prepackaged bacon. And the weather's only making things worse. A relentless drought across the Midwest is pushing pig farms to the brink. Some operations are so low on water that they've had to request emergency tank deliveries from local governments, and even then it's not fast enough. As water supplies dry up, piglets are dying at higher rates. Weaker herds, more farm losses, and for Smithfield, every pig that doesn't survive means another product not made, another customer lost. But that's still not the end of the story. Post-COVID, American consumers are on edge, and they're not tolerating meat prices that have nearly doubled in just one summer. If this shortage stretches on, many grocery chains will pivot to European or South American imports. At that point, Smithfield won't just be running out of hogs, they could be running out of trust. And when a protein powerhouse like Smithfield is barely hanging on, it's time to take a closer look at the brands tied to what used to be America's most dependable comfort food, the all-American breakfast. 6. General Mills. For generations, General Mills has been part of America's morning ritual, a name you'd associate with cereal boxes, pancake mix, and everything that says breakfast at home, but behind those cheerful boxes and nostalgic jingles, cracks are beginning to form, and they run deep into the heart of American agriculture. Wheat, the key ingredient in flour bread, frozen pizza dough, is now facing a double shock: declining production and skyrocketing stockpiles. The USDA recently reported end-of-season wheat reserves hitting 923 million bushels, the highest in 6 years. Sounds like a surplus, right? But it's not. It's actually a warning sign, a symptom of collapsing exports. Wheat is piling up not because we have too much, but because the logistics system is failing to get it where it needs to go. Storage costs have doubled in just 2 years, and to keep operations moving, General Mills has turned to imports, paying up to 30% more than domestic wheat would cost if only it were moving. So what does that mean for your breakfast? Imagine that familiar box of muffins or pancake mix, now made with more expensive, lower quality imported flour. The texture, not the same. The taste a little off. And the trust starting to crack. In Q3 of 2025, General Mills' North American retail revenue fell 7%, with breakfast products alone down nearly 10%. That's more than numbers on a chart. That's the moment when middle-aged consumers, the backbone of brand loyalty, start walking away, switching to cheaper alternatives. Not because they want to, but because the brand no longer delivers what it once promised. Unsold inventory is piling up. Assembly lines are slowing. Workers are standing idle, wondering what's next. The company has announced a $100 million cost-cutting plan for the upcoming fiscal year. But on the factory floor, everyone knows what that really means: fewer hours, lower pay, slashed benefits. And that's how the collapse of agriculture trickles down one paycheck at a time. Even the company's pet food and food service divisions, usually the safety nets, are only seeing modest growth, not nearly enough to offset the retail nosedive. General Mills is clinging to its strongest channels, but the weight of the fall is getting heavier. And here's the real issue. It's not just a financial loss, it's that feeling when you open a box and realize the flavor is weaker. The smell is faint. The texture crumbles. That small, invisible break in trust once lost, it's almost impossible to get back. If American agriculture isn't restored, if wheat labor and transport don't stabilize, General Mills won't just lose profits. It'll lose the very thing it built its legacy on: the taste of the American breakfast. And when that sense of familiarity is broken, those small foods tied to family memories become something distant, something foreign. Next, we turn to a brand where even jars of jam and peanut butter are being pulled into the same downward spiral. 7. J.M. Smucker. J.M. Smucker isn't just a name on the breakfast table, it's in every corner of the American kitchen. A jar of jam for toast, a spoonful of peanut butter for lunch, or a light cheese snack for dinner. But behind those sweet, nostalgic flavors lies a bitter reality as American agriculture falters. Smucker is quietly packing its bags, slipping out of the hearts and habits of everyday consumers. The company relies heavily on fruit, especially strawberries, apples, and cherries, crops now battered by prolonged droughts across Central Valley and Northern California. The harvest last month was down by as much as 35%, falling far below seasonal averages. That's not just a bad yield, it's a supply chain crisis. Smucker is being forced into tough decisions like importing from Chile at costs up to 40% higher than domestic produce, not to mention rising tariffs and shipping fees. But the fruit shortage is only half the story. Smucker is also facing a silent squeeze in the dairy supply. Small family-run dairy farms are going under, unable to afford the skyrocketing cost of cattle feed. That's made milk a key ingredient in their smooth peanut butter lines into a luxury. The creamy texture that made Jif and Skippy household staples. It's now at risk. And with it, the quiet comfort millions of working-class families rely on every morning is beginning to unravel. Instead of absorbing the blow, Smucker is scaling back. They've begun discontinuing several lower-volume jam and peanut butter products, a public signal that domestic production can no longer keep up. One of their factories in Ohio recently shut down its entire jam line, citing one devastating reason: no fruit left to process. When the machines go silent, it's no longer just about economics, it's a brand waving the white flag. But what's more alarming than losing a product is losing trust. When customers open a jar and see the seal still intact weeks later, they don't feel reassured, they feel uncertain. Not because it tastes worse, but because they're wondering if this brand is still what it used to be. One fleeting question: is there even anything left in here worth buying? Is all it takes to kill millions of repeat purchases. Efforts to cut corners, like switching to cheaper canned fruit or downsizing branding, only strip away authenticity. Smucker starts to feel less like the breakfast icon and more like a brand surviving on hardship. And if the product is no longer premium, who's going to pay that extra $1 per jar? The truth is, when customers still crave familiarity, but the supply chain can't deliver, J.M. Smucker stands to lose more than just revenue. It risks losing the emotional connection that once made it a family name. And when that bond breaks, even a simple jar of jam can feel like a stranger on the shelf. And don't get too comfortable with what's still in your morning cart. The next brand we're about to explore may just prove that this crisis is sparing no one. 8. Outback Steakhouse. It's becoming painfully clear steak once the symbol of a hearty, accessible meal for the American working class is now edging into luxury territory. You don't need statistics to see it. Just walk into an Outback Steakhouse. Once buzzing with laughter and full tables, now it's quieter, more empty seats, fewer tickets in the kitchen, and an eerie stillness that has nothing to do with a change in taste and everything to do with the rising price of beef, the very foundation of every meal they serve. In 2025, beef prices are spiraling out of control. America's cattle supply has been decimated by droughts, skyrocketing feed costs, and a labor shortage plaguing ranches from Texas to Nebraska to Kansas. Many ranchers have downsized drastically, some selling off entire herds just to stay afloat. The result, a supply chain already frayed by the pandemic, has finally snapped. Shipments to restaurants like Outback are no longer regular, the quality inconsistent, and the price nearly double what it was just a few years ago. But the real threat to Outback isn't just on the supply side, it's in the dining room. It's the mindset of the middle-class customer, the same folks who used to stop by after a long shift to order a medium rare steak with mashed potatoes or a side salad and leave feeling satisfied. Now they walk in, glance at the inflated prices, order the cheapest cut, skip the sides, or worse, walk out. For many, dining out just doesn't make sense anymore. Cooking at home has become the new default during this cost of living crisis, and there's no easy escape route. Sititredo. Importing beef from Australia or South America, not cheaper. In fact, thanks to global market volatility, transport costs, and import tariffs, it often ends up being more expensive, and even then, freshness can't be guaranteed. If the steak doesn't taste just right, customers notice and they don't come back. So what does it say when even a steakhouse, a brand built on America's most iconic comfort food, is struggling to stay afloat? It signals something much bigger. If a chain that serves up hot, sizzling, no-frills steak can't hold on to its base, what hope is there for the rest of the food industry, especially the ones tied to everyday habits? Breakfast spreads, lunchboxes, holiday feasts. Because if Outback's tables are emptying, we should all be asking whose pantry is next. 9. Calmain Foods. Eggs. Once a symbol of basic nourishment, cheap, accessible, reliable, are now creeping into luxury status in grocery stores across America. And at the center of this shift is Calmain Foods, the largest egg producer in the country. More than just an agricultural company, Calmain has long been the pulse of millions of working-class meals. But today that pulse is irregular, frantic, and the terrifying part, no one seems able to steady it in time. When Americans are paying over $6 for a dozen eggs, double the price from just a year ago, most don't realize this crisis runs deeper than just bird flu outbreaks or rising feed costs. The supply has been squeezed to the brink. Flocks decimated during the pandemic were never fully replenished. And here's the uncomfortable truth, there's little incentive to restock. Scarcity, it turns out, has become highly profitable. Calmain isn't drowning in crisis, it's cashing in on it. But the issue isn't just about cost, it's about consequence. Low-income families are now being forced to cut eggs once their only affordable source of protein from the breakfast table. Local diners, mom-and-pop restaurants, and school cafeterias are shrinking portions, rewriting menus, or turning to cheaper, lower-quality eggs from questionable suppliers. One broken link in the food chain and the fallout ripples across the entire system like dominoes. You might ask, why not just import more eggs? In theory, sure, but in reality, it's nearly impossible. Sky-high shipping costs, import tariffs, and strict food regulations mean foreign eggs often cost more than domestic ones. The nightmare facing American agriculture isn't about running out, it's about pricing people out. There are still eggs, but not enough wallets that can afford them. When a single egg is priced like a premium item, it stops being a market fluctuation and starts becoming a red flag. A warning sign of supply chains in disarray, broken regulatory oversight, and a growing sense of economic insecurity creeping into the most ordinary parts of life. Because if something as humble and essential as an egg, once a symbol of sufficiency, can be weaponized by greed and profit margins, what happens to industries that depend on millions of tons of corn and soy just to survive? 10. Archer Daniels. Midland ADM. If agriculture is the backbone of America, then Archer Daniels Midland, or ADM, is the spinal cord silent, unseen, but absolutely essential to keeping the entire system alive. And right now, that system is fracturing from within. ADM is no longer the one steering the ship. It's becoming a casualty of a deeper systemic breakdown. ADM is one of the biggest processors, distributors, and exporters of corn, soybeans, and wheat in the country, the raw ingredients behind everything from food and livestock feed to biofuels and consumer goods. But as farmers across the Midwest abandon their fields under the crushing weight of input costs, ADM's grain silos are beginning to empty out. And an empty silo doesn't just mean one lost harvest, it means lost jobs, broken contracts, and a chain reaction of disappearing trust across hundreds of smaller businesses. In Illinois, home to one of ADM's largest soybean crushing plants, output has dropped 30% compared to last year. Not because of broken machinery, but because there's simply no beans. 1 ton of soy that doesn't make it to the grinder means one less shipment of cooking oil on store shelves, one missed export deal, one more negative figure on the quarterly report. Behind those numbers are real people, technicians being furloughed, truckers sitting idle in empty yards, family farms losing the will to plant another season. ADM was once the shining emblem of modern agriculture, where technology and scale were supposed to feed the world. But in today's economy, volume doesn't guarantee survival. What matters now is whether a company can stay afloat amid price shocks, unpredictable weather, labor shortages, and a logistics system hanging by a thread. Even a 100 billion empire can stumble, just from missing a few million bushels of corn. And when ADM can no longer serve as the heartbeat of America's food supply, the real question isn't, how high will grocery prices go? It's, what will the US economy lean on to endure a slow-burning food crisis, one without dramatic headlines, but creeping into every breakfast table, every fuel pump, every bread and beer production line, like a chronic disease we never saw coming. 11. If you believe that the nation once known for feeding the world will always stand strong no matter what, maybe it's time to take a closer look. An abandoned cornfield in Iowa, an idle grain mill in Illinois, a local diner that can no longer get meat from domestic farms. These aren't isolated events. They're warning signs that the American agricultural engine is faltering. And the scariest part? It's not going out with a bang. It's quietly stealing jobs opportunities and decent meals from working families one day at a time. Are we putting too much faith in megacorporations that depend on a supply chain already full of cracks? This video doesn't aim to create panic or encourage division. Its purpose is to spark thought, to raise awareness about the fragile state of American agriculture and how it impacts everyday life. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss future deep dives where we speak the truths mainstream media avoids. We respect the Constitution of the United States and all federal regulations. This content is created for educational purposes only. It does not make absolute predictions. It offers an independent perspective, empowering you to make informed decisions when it matters most.